Hey there, how's it going?
Ahoy there.
Oh,
Happy New Year.
Howdy.
This is Art Burdick. We got Emma Michelson in Sweden and Josh Newell in an undisclosed area in California. So, for those who don't know, which I'm sure is nobody, Josh Newell is an amazing recording engineer, mixer, and he mixed the entire Martorn EP. And thank you very much for that. It sounds fucking amazing.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
You just look up Josh Newell recordings. He's also produced Intronauts album and among many other good names.
Yeah, like heavy
I don't
artists
know
like
which
Avril
ones.
Lavigne. And I actually don't do a lot of like metal this heavy, I guess would be the way to word it. Like a lot of the metal bands I do are kind of more like a little more proggy, and you guys are a little more black metal. So that was cool for me because I don't get to do a lot of that. So yeah, but I mean, you and I have known each other for a really long time, so it was cool to finally get to like properly work on a project together, other than just playing some bass on something you're doing.
Yeah, he plays bass. He's an awesome bass player, by the way.
So that was cool. Like, yeah, I don't get to do like super heavy music like this. So it's like a really, it's kind of a different mindset, especially with your music is so dense because there's like really busy drums and like a lot of guitars and a lot of guitar overdubs and, you know, like kick drums going the whole time, like heavy rhythm guitars, like 2 stacks of heavy lead, a vocal stack, and then all the keys. And yeah, it was really cool. Like it was definitely kind of a learning experience for me. And as far as like kind of like how to make it where you can hear everything through all the layers.
I don't know. I would imagine that it would be challenging to, because some parts of the songs all of a sudden go very mellow, and then we go into like the black metal parts or whatever it might be right after to get it to mix well. Is that like a challenge with stuff like that, or how do you tackle?
Yeah, it is actually, because what's sounding really good when you guys are all really heavy doesn't immediately translate to when things get soft. So there's there'll be a big shift effects are doing, and so you kind of get like the heavy, let's get this heavy section sounding good, let's get this clean section sounding good, and then you sit down and go like, okay, how do I get in and out of this without the volume dropping a lot, or reverse, like it's sounding weird because when it gets more sparse and with just keyboards and strings, you don't want that louder, but you also don't want the song to drop out. So it's it's kind of a lot of back and forth. You almost get the 2 pieces sounding good, and then you just kind of listen to as they move in and out of each other to make it like, because you want the drop, but you don't want it to be. You don't want people to like lean over and turn up their car stereo because the music drops out. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
No, I think all those transitions really sound very like it comes together so well, like the way I imagined it would in the mix. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. I mean, that's probably the hardest part in mixing it, because when everything's going and once you get it, like, because it's so brutal and relentless, like it just sits there. So yeah, it's the transition versus like, if you did, I don't know, a country song where there's banjo popping in and out.
So what projects are you working on now?
I just sing a band. Well, I think it's been a couple months now. I mixed a band called Dawn Fades. They're kind of along the lines like Cult of Luna or something like that. Kind of that heavy atmospheric stuff. I'm mixing a band from the Pacific Northwest that's the kind of 90s grunge-ish at the moment.
Nice.
What else am I working on these days? I think there might be a new Intronaut record starting before the end of the year. So we'll see on that. And then since the pandemic killed the momentum on the last one, and I'm not really sure what else is on the table at the moment. I've had a couple people reach out, but I kind of don't want to jinx it and say like, oh, this is definitely happening. So
right.
Yeah,
I
so
understand.
a lot of just kind of mixing, because it's, I can do it just here at my home. And
Beautiful.
we had to shutter. I had a studio space that we had to kind of close down during the pandemic that we haven't got around to reopening yet. So some more work right now. Yeah, I kind of dabble in a lot of different audio fields, so music's not the only thing I do. So, but like the other stuff probably would not be very exciting for this conversation. So
Okay.
You deal a lot with ears.
yeah, pretty much nonstop. I mean, it's kind of like if you turn everything up loud to listen, like it always just sounds awesome regardless.
Yeah, that's
so
a good point.
I mix it a low to medium, like mix it a low volume for a long time, and then maybe turn it up a little bit just to make sure. And sometimes you have it low, you're like, oh, and you turn up the bass is too loud, or you got too much high end in the cymbals. But I'm pretty religious about keeping. That's the only thing I'm religious about is keeping the volume low.
You might. Well, I went to recording engineer school right after high school, and like one of the first lessons, if not like the first lesson, was like on the EQ, and he was like, okay, play around with it, and now the most important lesson is bypass, and then put it on again, and make sure that you don't think it sounds better just because it's louder.
Yeah,
That's the most important thing you can ever learn.
20 years. God damn.
yeah.
That's 2 decades of experience. Everyone, 2 decades. What's the best way for a project or an artist to reach you for consideration of working with them?
If you just Google Josh Newell, and yeah, you're recording or audio or something, my website in theory should pop up. It's just my name, Josh, and then -Newell.com. And there's it's a really basic site that hasn't been updated in about 3 years, so the credits are a little old. I'll get that done. When you guys get your stuff out, I'll add you guys on there. But there's a contact page.
Yeah, and don't worry if you can't put Martorn up there because it's too ugly sounding and heavy compared to your other projects.
I take it back. There's a couple death metal records on there, but yeah,
not as heavy as us though.
Exactly.
We take pride in being the heaviest. Different people have said different genres in regards to Martorn. What would you say?
When I was explaining it to people, I mainly called it black metal. I'm not an expert in that one, but it kind of stylistically the vocals I thought were kind of there. The orchestral additions I felt were kind of like black metal-ish, and then especially kind of the high guitar overdubs you guys would do. I typically think of black metal, but I just kind of like the whole march is kind of that European. Like not just because of the female vocals, but like Arch Enemy and stuff like that, where it's like heavy, kind of busy guitar work. Like it's not like the inflame. What's the Gothenburg? Isn't that how you pronounce it? The Gothenburg sound that everyone was chasing for years. Like it's not that, but it's not. I don't how to word it. Like black metal that's supposed to sound good. I guess is that a genre?
Yeah, it should sound good.
I think that.
I mean, there is some, I know what you're saying though, because there's, like you said, the Gothenburg, or what was it? Gothenburg sound in flames, right?
Yeah, there's kind of like the influence of, I guess the thing of that, like, it has some elements to like, what at least for me when I was like sitting down in like production and mixing, especially with some of the references you gave me, I was listening to stuff like Arch Enemy, Amon Amarth, like some of the newer Carcass records, stuff like that. Versus like the really super washed out reverb-y stuff. So like there's reverb on the drums, but there's still like the kick and snare are still kind of dry, so they cut through. So like to me, I was listening to like a lot of like kind of newer European style metal bands. So stuff like Jens Brogan would be mixing or things like that. So I guess that's to me more like I kind of think more about like versus hard genre, like it's more, I kind of know records that sound like what I would go for with this. So I was listening to Andy Sneap mixes, Jens Bogren mixes, stuff like that.
Who's that?
Jens Bogren? Actually, big Swedish mixer. He did like, I actually think he did the Amon Amarth record. I forget which the exact record you sent, but I think he mixed the Amon Amarth record you were looking at. But he's also done Between the Buried and Me and some bands like that. Andy Sneap, has just been around and done everybody from like, I think the Kill Switch Engage record from the early 2000s was the one that like really shot him into the stratosphere. Like everybody was trying to sound like him in the 2000s. But if you look at Andy Sneap, like he's done everybody.
Awesome. And pretty soon you're going to have done everybody as well. It's just a matter of time.
Now it seems like, but
yeah, it certainly seems like it now. So, I mean, you've even worked on rap records, right?
I have, yeah. Nas and Puff Daddy and who else?
I mean, those are pretty big names in that world. And I also work with rap producers playing with rap guitars, which is newish thing these years.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, I'm just making metal ballads, and then they turn them into hip hop beats and trap.
I don't. Yeah, I guess the hip hop stuff I did would be more kind of older artists. Like I'm not up on current hip hop production, but when I moved to LA 20 years ago, I actually interned with a guy that was a mixer for Death Row Records, and was Snoop Dogg's live sound guy. So we did like when I did my internship, I helped do sound at a Snoop Dogg show, and then I was mixing a couple rap artists, and then really early on, Daz Dillinger, who's part of like the whole Dog Pound crew, he had some metal band that he had found, and we were doing that. So that was good. And then the studio I worked at for almost years, like my first big studio gig here, was the place that does like all those new metal bands. So I was like, oh, I kind of know how to do hip hop, and I kind of know how to do metal. It fit for me.
Right. Yeah, that's right. That's the hip hop element in metal. No, that's cool, man. If anything, your palette is very diverse.
I try to be. I mean, I think that makes everybody for a better musician, audio engineer in general. Like you gotta, and it's more interesting. It's kind of why I stopped playing in bands so much. I mean, part of it was it wasn't working schedule-wise, but when it hit the point where bands like, oh, we're going to tour or we're going to sign a deal, and I was like, I don't know that I want to play like the same album for the next 2 years on tour. Like I like that I was having those years like, oh, you're going to work with Nas, and then you're going to work with Linkin Park, and then you're going to do like an Intronaut record where it's all like weird prog stuff, and then, oh, you're going to do this. Like, I don't know. The beginning to do different things makes working in music fun for me. Like if I just did the same thing every day, I think I'd get really bored.
And that's why you went on and became a full-time engineer when In This Moment got signed, right? When you used to be the bass player?
Yeah, really early on. Yeah, they hit a point where like, we're going to tour until we get official deal. And I was like, oh, this band's going places. And I was kind of like, I don't think I want to do that. So.
Dabble into it.
It's like really super nerding in on mixing and going around YouTube and wanted to know something about how to mix a really heavy metal band. What would we want them to know?
That is a good question. I think if you're coming in and like mixing anybody, I think the first thing to do is definitely talk to them. Talk to the band, ask what they were listening to when they were making their record, and then what they want their end product to sound like. And really important, have a conversation about them whether or not that's realistic. I did a project recently where they recorded a whole thing, they sent it to me to mix, and then they were like, oh, we love the new Deftones album, the guitars sound great, guitars sound like that. And I listened to it, and I listened to their tracks, and I went, no, I can't. The trick with that is, I'm trying to think how to word it. So I have a friend who's a really successful mixer, and he told me that the trick with mixing is in part getting the band's references. Like when you gave me Amon Amarth, I was like, okay, that's a good reference for this. Like what you guys doing kind of musically is very along those lines, and then it let me help, I can kind of shape the sounds to be like that, or it gives you an idea of like what the respective volumes should be. Like, oh, they're giving me this like really guitar heavy band, or they're giving me this really drum heavy band. It kind of helps you figure that out. But I think I'm derailing myself. My friend's suggestion was, he's like, a lot of times when bands give you references, you have to figure out what it is about that recording they really like. He's like, for example, a lot of people will be like, oh man, we want to make like a new Appetite for Destruction. And you're like, okay. And you go back and you listen to Appetite for Destruction. And Appetite for Destruction sounds really good, but for what it is an 80s recording, it's not gonna have the same impact. So he was like, what you do is you realize like, oh, they kind of want like they want like the feeling of energy you get from listening to like Welcome to the Jungle. Like you don't put Welcome to the Jungle on and be like, man, these drums are awesome. Like they don't sound bad. Like nobody these super pumped on Welcome to the Jungle drums, but Welcome to the Jungle, right. Like you're kind of like, yeah, I like that feeling. So it's a lot of that. It's like you have to figure out two things: sound what they want and how realistic it would be for you to get there, and then two, you have to figure out like energy, like what it is they want out of that reference, energy wise. So with you guys, like, I'm sure you can tell I added, there's kick drum and snare samples on what you guys are doing. And it's just kind of a necessity of the genre, like to get the kicks to sit through anything that heavy, the snare, like you kind of need that. I think that's a lot of what is being able to sit down and listen to a project and go, okay, I see what the end goal is here, and then kind of helping it get across that line. I think that's kind of part why you hired me for this one versus doing it yourself, was you're like, okay, I have an end vision for this that I want to achieve. I think if I use Josh, we can kind of get it there.
So what was your favorite part about mixing Martorn?
It was really, for me, like I said, it was cool because it's music I don't normally do. But I really appreciated like your flexibility when I was asking for re-records on stuff. For parts like, hey, this isn't quite working, I think the way you want it to in the mix, or if you could swap what you're doing here, or I think these notes rub a little bit. Because a lot of times when you're, and it's cool that we're friends, so I could ask that stuff, but it was cool that you guys were flexible to do it. Of course. It just made it easier as far as like shoehorning parts in, and it also makes you feel better as a mixer because you're kind of involved, and when people are listening to you too, it always makes you feel good. It makes you want to work a little harder. So there was that, but there was also like a lot of, and part of why I'm not as into mixing. I don't like really try to do a lot of super brutal music is because of like what I was saying earlier, when like if it's really heavy, like you basically kind of get everything balanced and it's just really heavy. And I think a lot of bands don't do dynamics well or interesting parts. So you guys would do that. So it'd be like this like heavy, brutal thing where like, okay, these are my usual reverbs, these are my usual kind of delays, like I use on vocals. But then you guys would hit some weird spacey part and it could be like, oh, now I'm gonna pull out like the weird plugins and I'm gonna make some weird distorted reverbs, or I'm gonna do this, and like that's kind of fun because it's not so much like that's more creative mixing. Not that like mixing isn't creative on the heavy parts too, but when it gets that spacey, or even I'm blanking on the kind of instrumental non-heavy piece where it's just like, oh, okay, I'm gonna get out a bunch of weird sounds and just slap those on there and see what it sounds like. Like that to me is really fun.
What you're talking about is like what makes the songs fun for us too when we write them. Like to make this heavy part somehow transition to this other part and make the big contrast work somehow. And that's what's fun for me when I sing, to have like to be able to use those different voices and all that stuff.
I do really appreciate that you seem to genuinely care about the end product. It sounds funny because you would think everyone cares, but it's not true. Some people just want to mix it, see you later, and you know what I mean? If there was something that sounded odd to you, you would bring it up, and I would like, okay, if Josh is hearing something, and Emma and I at this point our heads were really too close and deep into it. You were the fresh ears,
Yeah, and, I've been on really long projects where someone's like, "What do you think of this new part?" And you've heard the song so many times, you're like, I think it's just different. I don't even know if this is better. It's just different. So yeah, right, I know exactly what you mean.
Exactly.
In fact, I've always insisted on not being the one recording and mixing my own bands. Like I've just, I know you do it a lot. Like I can't do it. So I totally understand. It's hard to, it's hard to get that step back.
I'm so glad you did it because I feel like this project was the one that really deserved special treatment, and Josh Newell is special treatment to your music, everyone,
Yeah, it also, it wasn't a problem with you guys, but it's also always nice when you have someone who's outside the band like kind of in on the arguments to help settle. But
Yes.
you guys didn't really have that issue this time around, fortunately. So,
Yeah.
so thanks for not arguing, you two.
We went through all of that before we brought it to you.
Oh, perfect. No, and I'm really happy with how it came out too. Like I felt like it came out like exactly what everybody was trying to make it sound like. So
Yeah, hell yes. Getting a lot of compliments.
but yeah, you guys did a really good job of not sending me one thing and then asking for it to sound like something completely different then.
Anything else you want to plug?
I don't think so. Like I'm pretty scheduled up. My life's going to be a bit busy the next couple months anyway, so I'm like actually taking a little bit of downtime. So I'm not really looking to like drum up a whole bunch of work. Yeah, like I said, I hope that Intronaut thing comes through. A couple of the other projects, like some of them are like they don't even have names for the band yet, so I don't even know that I would be able to plug them. It's like kind of friend stuff. I'm hoping my band gets together our next EP relatively soon. We'll see if that pans out. So,
What's your band's name?
Ironside.
Ironside.
Yeah.
Oh, so the Martorn debut EP is dropping July 2nd. Long awaited.
And where do people get that? iTunes, Spotify,
iTunes,
everywhere?
Spotify, Apple Music, the usual suspects.
Yes.
Bandcamp.
Bandcamp.
Is it digital?
There's a lot of
pressing, or
options for merch too.
Oh yeah, is it all digital, or is it going to be like an actual pressing?
All digital.
Nice.
The pressing will come when there's. I want the pressing to be a bigger release. Maybe the pressing will be the next EP and this one put together.